guess by now everybody's sort of recognised that I've been doing a lot of paintings that contain blue shadow. Part of the reason for that is that up here in Scotland, the light that you get tends to have quite a lot of blue in the shadows. That's certainly my view, particularly during winter when the sun is very horizontal. And you could see in this view of an Angus farm that I've really gone to town with that. And likewise, this view of the old town in Lerwick, up in the Northern Isles again, I've really used that technique to provide not a black and white drawing as such, but a sort of blue and white drawing. Because I think that that's actually in a way a more realistic way of portraying it, but also it creates a certain abstract quality of its own that appeals to me. But how am I actually achieving that? So lift the sketchbook out the road, and the first thing is that I've got a number of acrylic inks, and these inks were a set that I got back at Christmas time, and they are very liquid, and basically they have a little pipette in them that you draw the liquid up into, and you then dilute it, and you tend to use it in very dilute form. Now, what I've done, because of the way that I'm actually drawing, is that I'm actually using these water brushes. Now, I've got quite a lot of these, and what I've done with this particular one is that I've mixed up my favourite combination of violet and blue inks, and I've put them into the water brush pen, and I've then diluted that down to the level that I want. Now, I did say that I've got quite a lot, and the reason why I'm sort of emphasising that is that to some extent, certainly with these ones, which are basically the same as the one that I've got the blue ink in, blue violet ink in, is that it's quite attritional. Certainly this particular one doesn't have any paint in it. You can see the tip and so on. You know, it's a relatively basic tip, but when you tend to put it into the cap, it's something that can get quite easily damaged. So you find that the sort of filaments of the brush, the fibres of the brush, can gradually degrade. And certainly when you've got the blue ink in it, that is even more so, that it just tends to be a little bit rougher. Now, I do have a range of other water brushes. These particular ones are Pentel, and you know, these are much more like normal brushes that you would use in watercolour, but even with that one you could see that one of the hairs in the brush has just bent over, and it's probably just putting it back into the cap. Now, I've certainly got these in a variety of sizes. I use these purely for water, so what I might do is dilute down further the blue ink that I was showing you earlier on, just to actually give it more of a fade or something like that, you know. Now, what I'm tending to do when I'm sort of drawing away is that I'm using a Biro pen, because that's waterproof, and if I sort of sketch away briefly, and what we'll do is we'll then come back into this and add some shadow and so forth to it, and you could see how it sort of gradually builds up, you know. And I'm just sort of, in a way, making lines here. It's not particularly representative of anything in particular, but let's imagine that the sun is coming in from the right hand side. And we could then begin to see how that might come together. Now, obviously, the thing with the Biro pen is that it's obviously, you know, largely speaking, a single thickness. It's not, you know, you can be expressive. You could see that I'm tending to use heavier and lighter lines and so on occasionally, but you know, it is what it is. It is basically a single thickness pen, but there are things that I do to sort of expand that out a little bit as well, which we'll go into briefly. Just get some grass here in the foreground, sketch it in. I think the final thing is that I've got a John A. Road sign sort of coming in, and you'll actually see that I've actually posted something of this view with a much more careful sketch view, and on LinkedIn and on Instagram. If you follow me on that, you'll see it. This is slightly difficult because I've obviously got a camera between me and the paper, but just takes your eye off things a little bit. But you could begin to see how all of that comes together, and we'll just get something in terms of big trees, because it's Highland Perthshire, so there's a lot of big trees in Highland Perthshire. There's a lot of botanists travelled the world from there and then came back and created design landscapes and so on, and this particular bit of Perthshire around Weem and Aberfeldy certainly has its fair share of that. So you can begin to see that little sketch there. Now, what I'm now going to do is bring this in, and the biggest surface that's in shadow is this one over here. And you could see that you know, I just push that over the paper, and the blue ink or indeed paint could come out, you know. Now, if I squeeze it, you know, this big tree up here is definitely in shadow. If I squeeze it, obviously more ink comes out, and that actually then tends to be much darker. So obviously it's sort of slightly odd thinking about a tree being blue, but as I say, quite often shadows are actually blue as opposed to greens and blacks and things like that. And you can see that really what I'm trying to do is just actually bring out more contrast between something that's in the foreground and something that's in the background to actually give it form. And again, squeeze out a little bit more of the ink here, and and you could then get that going on around the road sign as well. And you can see that I'm just trying to make the tree that little bit more three-dimensional as well. And obviously you don't have to squeeze, and you can then get effectively much lighter tones in that just give something a little bit more depth, you know. So it's effectively something which is really quite simple and easy to use, but you could see it is quite effective at just pulling things out and giving it a lot more depth than it would otherwise have. And you know, it really, from my perspective, it means that I've always got ink and paint and so on handy, because it's all just pre-made and it's sort of ready to go, you know. So it's certainly a technique that's worth thinking about, and you know, certainly these pens are not expensive. The Pentel ones that I showed earlier on, they are about £12 or so for a set of 3. So, you know, these ones with the better nibs, well, better brush tips, they are about £12 for 3, and they're quite high quality, albeit they will degrade eventually. These other ones are that much cheaper. They're probably about £6 for 3 or thereabouts, and you could buy these directly from Artful, or indeed they're relatively generic and you could get them online as well, as was the case with this one. That's the generic one, but when you actually hold them up, they're basically identical other than the lid. So that's a little bit more of what I'm doing.